to Blue Jean.
There's Jeff.
No, he's back. All right. I think we're officially live. I see that green bar underneath my screen saying that we're live. So we are live. I want to welcome everyone to this awesome workshop that I'm pumped about because we're going to be diving into sponsored ads and everything in between as far as like how to get started, how to get a campaign up and running, and how to get profitable, and also how to drive traffic to these keywords or search term words. And we'll talk about all of that stuff. But I've got a couple of experts on. I've got Jeff from Seller Labs and Brandon, and they're going to actually be doing a lot of the teaching here. So I'm just kind of welcoming everyone on. I want to say thank you. Definitely use the chat. We have the chat here for you guys to interact with each other. We will be asking questions. We'll have a poll and all of that stuff because we want to make this and the content as far as the education. We want it to be top notch. We want to answer any questions that you guys have during this process. They've created an amazing training today that we're going to go through, and we're going to stay on for live Q&A. So if you guys have questions, definitely use those. But also, while we're waiting here, we got about 10 more minutes. Put your first name and where you're tuning in from in the chat right now. I want to see where everyone's coming in from all over the world. And I think that's always fun. We've got a couple people already saying that they're in the Caribbean, and we've got Israel. We got a bunch of people jumping in from all over the place.
Yeah, we had a few from China before.
Yeah. So, all right. So Jeff and Brandon, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us, man. And guys, what's up? How you guys doing?
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Super
Absolutely.
excited. Hey, this is not my room. It's a hotel room. So just so nobody thinks this is that I broadcast live from my bedroom.
It's a pretty nice bedroom though, Jeff, by the way.
Swanky hotels, in
It's
Vegas.
a swanky hotel. Yeah. So, Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about here today?
Yeah, so we are going to cover sponsored product ads. It's something that a lot of sellers struggle with. It's something that requires a little bit of, I think Chris kind of put it best, right? It requires a little bit of art and a little bit of science. It doesn't follow the traditional follow step 1, 2, 3 that a lot of sellers are used to. And so I think that frustrates a lot of sellers as they're getting into this. So our hope today is to really kind of bring everybody up to speed, give everybody kind of an understanding of what sponsored ads are, how to use them, what the definitions and terms are. It's kind of a foreign language if you've never done ads before, and some simple ways to get started. That's really what we want, is give people an opportunity to get started and know kind of what they should and shouldn't be doing as they're getting started.
Yeah, Jeff, let me ask you a quick question. How important do you think sponsored ads is when launching a new product?
So I just got back from a trade show, and one of the guys on stage at the trade show said that sponsored ads is the new normal, that if you're not running sponsored ads in conjunction with your product launches, you're missing out. And I think a year ago, sponsored ads was kind of the Wild West, and you were able to really get in there and get cheap traffic. Now it's kind of a necessity of your business. And it's an opportunity with very few reviews to start generating sales for your product. So you don't need a lot of reviews. You just need a couple of reviews to start generating sales. And the beauty of that is that as you start generating those sales, you can, do a follow-up sequence and you can start asking for reviews.
Yeah, I look at the sponsored ads really too as understanding your market. And I mean, we're going to go through this and you guys are going to be covering this stuff in pretty solid detail here, but it's really about like taking stuff that you think people are searching for and then actually seeing the real raw data. I think that's the really powerful part here, and being able to then optimize your listing and all of that fun stuff that goes with it. Now that you actually say, oh, this was the actual thing that people were searching for. I thought it was this, but it's actually this. And then all of a sudden you're kind of now expanding on that stuff. And I know a lot of people, when they get started, they're just like, it just seems like so much to understand, like even the terms. And I know that we're going to cover a lot of that stuff too. But I mean, for today, I guess the big thing that I want to be able to do for people is actually allow them to leave here with an action plan.
Yeah. And so here's what I find that's kind of funny, Scott. So you and I, because I think you and I are next to each other in the videos right now, we're kind of the marketers that want the simple way to do it, the action plan to get started. The two guys below us, Chris and Brandon, they're more of the data guys They want to go deep, deep, deep into the data. They want the data to make the decisions for them. And so it's a really good balance of understanding kind of simplistic models and more advanced models. Today, we're going to really try to stay to the simple side of sponsored ads so we don't lose anybody. But I know that you've got a lot of stuff planned this week that you're going to get into more advanced techniques.
Yeah. And what I want to do really is I want you guys to kind of break everything down, cover everything, and go as deep as we can without losing people, but then also give them an action plan. And then what Chris and I are going to do is we're going to jump on Facebook Lives this entire week. And we're going to really dive into each part of this workshop and then kind of recover some of it, but then also answer any further questions. And again, if we don't have the questions, I'll be going to Brandon or I'll be going to you, and we'll have those answers for everyone. So again, I just wanted to just let everyone know that, if you get overwhelmed, it's okay. It's normal. We're going to try to make it a lot simpler for you, but also you can go back and watch this again and then go through this data. We're going to give you some downloads and stuff too, where you can actually go through this so you don't have to worry about writing everything down, although you'll probably want to write some things down.
And I think one of the suggestions Brandon made, we're going to talk about it once we get into the slides, is sit there today and just watch this and take it all in.
Yeah.
Take a little bit of action and then watch this again, and it will make so much more sense. If you've never done, I'm going to give you the warning here, and we're going to do this in the actual presentation. If you've never done sponsored product ads before, you're going to get confused. It's a complicated process that does require you to do some learning, and it's not necessarily as intuitive as some of the other stuff that you've learned in the Amazon world.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I guess my goal here is to really make it a simple way to start. Because if we can get them to start, we can start collecting the data. And then, like Brandon and Chris, they love looking at the data and all the numbers. And then you can start to make those decisions to then what to do next. And I know Brandon's going to really dive into kind of like these 3 different phases of kind of like how you find the keywords and you mine for the search terms is really what you're doing. And then you start collecting the data, the clicks, the impressions, and all that fun stuff. But I just want people to know that when you're like, I have people too, Jeff, that say, you know what? Like I've got a product and it's doing okay. I'm not going to run pay-per-click anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're losing. So we're going to get into the terminology here in a second, but if you can generate if I told you that you make $5 in profit from every product that you sell, and essentially you could pay me $1 and I could make you $4, would you want to pay me $1?
Of course.
So if you can do sponsored ads correctly, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to pay $1 and make a few dollars. And some people want to pay $2.50 and make $2.50. Some people want to pay $5 and make nothing. Some people want to pay $1 and make $4. That's the art of sponsored product ads, and you have to kind of decide what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to show you is that your competitors' ads are showing up, and they're getting better placement on the page than you can ever rank for. And so, if you want the opportunity to have that position, you got to pay to play. That's just kind of the way it works today.
Yeah. No, there's a lot into that. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, if you're not running sponsored ads and your competitors are, you're definitely losing sales due to that. And we'll show some slides. Most people that have shopped on Amazon are familiar with all the placement you get for sponsored products. But if you're not running sponsored products and you have competitors that are, you're definitely losing out on sales from those.
Yeah. I've even had people say, okay, I'm already on page 1. Do I still? And my thing is, well, wouldn't you want to be in 2 spots on page 1?
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's my thought. But okay, so we're about ready to kick this baby off.
Is Chris trying to talk? Is Chris you trying to talk?
I muted myself so that when I was chatting to people, you guys wouldn't hear the clickety clack on my keyboard, and then I'm dropping all these golden nuggets over here that nobody can hear because I didn't ever unmute myself. No, I was going to say, I got tagged in a Facebook post yesterday, Scott. I don't remember if it was in the main group or if it was in the private label classroom. And somebody asked that exact question, hey, I rank number 1 for all of my main keywords, right? Mm-hmm. Should I still be running sponsored ads? And I sent them to the clip where we talked about PPC. I think it was in episode 119, which is, we'll cover some of the do's and don'ts here. So don't worry about going and listening to that, where you and I had that exact conversation. And it's what's the worst thing that can happen if you rank number 1 and you also have a sponsored ad on that page? You pay $1 to get that customer.
Right.
Would you rather get that sale or let your competitor get that sale? And that's exactly what Brandon was alluding to earlier. So
yeah. Okay, Chris, why don't you just quickly run through the chat how that's going to work, and then we can go ahead and we can kick it over to Brandon and Jeff and let those guys dig into this sponsored ads training.
sounds good. So guys, we do like to leave the chat open throughout the entire workshop so that you can ask any question you have at any point. If it's something that we can kind of type a really quick answer back to you, I'll be active in the chat throughout the workshop here today. If it's something that takes a little bit longer, is going to benefit everybody that's in the class with us today, or is just something that might need to be discussed among the 4 of us, we will save that, and we are going to do a live Q&A basically till we drop at the end. So if you guys have any questions, leave them in there at any point, and we'll get to them just as soon as we can.
All right, cool. So if you guys want to take it over, and we'll officially start here, and we'll kick this sponsored products ads training off.
Yeah,
officially.
and to encourage people while Brandon's flipping things over, to encourage people to participate in the chat, I've asked Scott and Chris to pick a winner at the end of the broadcast, and whoever that winner is needs to still be online. That's the key. And we'll give away 6 months for you throughout this. So,
hey
keep
Jeff,
that in
can
mind and
you
participate.
just repeat that? I think we lost you while he was switching over to the slides.
We lost you during the punchline.
Yeah.
So if you participate in chat, and then at the end of the presentation and you're still live, you're still on, we are going to give away 6 months free of a new software for managing sponsored product ads. And we'll also throw in a couple of these cool t-shirts. And Chris and Scott, you guys can kind of pick who the winners are, but participate in chat along the way, and that's how you get entered.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And yeah, we've got some cool stuff to announce here. That's going to kick this right into high gear. So let's just dive into the content. So if you guys want to take it over, I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself down. I'll be in the chat though. So if you guys are in the chat, I'll be around. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm not sure we might have lost Jeff there, but we wanted to start out with a quick poll. And I think Chris is setting this up. Poll question: are you currently running sponsored product ads? Let us know if you're doing that in the browser there, in the window there. And we would like to know how many people are using sponsored products, how many are just getting started. Let us know what you're doing there.
And Brandon, of everybody that's with us now, it looks like 41% are brand new, or 40%, it just changed on me. 15% aren't brand new, but they just kind of launched. 43% have been running sponsored ads for a while, and 1% just want to know, what the heck is a sponsored product?
Most people are familiar with it, and that's good to hear. So
great. So yeah, I think we're going to try to cover all of that, and we've got a lot to get through in a short period of time. So let's put up our warning, and I think that's a good way for us to get started. You know, what we're going to cover here is very dense. It's very dense data. And
yeah, so there's a lot of stuff here. So the what we wanted to recommend here is, like, if you're not familiar with sponsored products and this is your first exposure to it, this webinar will be available. It's a replay later. So watch it now, go through starting a campaign for a little bit, walk through the process yourself, some of these tips that we have, and then go back to some of this content, this video, whatever you want to do again. You'll just continue to get more out of it as you've had experience with it.
So as we kind of spoke about during the pre-roll of this, is really, why do you want to use sponsored product ads? And there's mainly 3 reasons why you would want to use sponsored product ads. And the main reason you're going to do that is to generate sales, especially for new products. You also want to use them to to generate sales for soliciting reviews. And it's ultimately a great way for sponsored product ads to be used to boost your sales and your BSR. And so as you're looking at at your deficit, right? So I know Scott and Chris teach you guys that you need to look at your total estimate number of sales, and then you have an estimate of daily sales that you need, and maybe you need 10 and you're currently generating 5. If you can generate an additional 5 sales with sponsored product ads, you're going to move yourself up with sales velocity into the sales ranking that you're looking for. Before we get into how sponsored ads work, we really need to all kind of understand the definitions. And, that's what we really want to dive into. Is there's a lot of terms and keywords that we need to be looking at. So Brandon, let's kind of go through these one by one and give some examples of what these terms are. So the first one is impressions.
Yeah, I mean, impression is, if you come from an advertising background, an impression is, you're probably familiar with the term. But in terms of Amazon terminology, it simply means that your ad was shown to a customer somewhere. So we'll show you a number of the placements that you get from sponsored products. But the number of impressions, when you see it on your reports and everything, it simply just means like an ad was shown in any one of these places. So these are all the different places we kind of came up with that your ad is shown, right? So if you type in a search term, we're using Apple Slicer throughout the presentation here. But if I type in Apple Slicer on Amazon, I get sponsored products kind of front and center right here. That is the top of search results. We also have a sponsored products over on the right sidebar there. At the bottom of the search results page, down by where you have the pagination, there's usually 4 more search results or sponsored products results down there. So you get really prominent position in search results, even above a lot of the organic stuff.
Yeah, and in addition to seeing it on your page, you're also going to see it on your product detail page. And this is something that you've probably seen as you've looked at your product detail page. And so you'll see this both on your product detail page as well as your competitor's page. And this is a great opportunity if somebody is landing on a competitor's listing that maybe you have something that they're looking for that's different than what your competitor is offering, right? So this is why we talk about wanting to enhance the product. And if your product is solving something that the customer is looking for, you can actually take a sale from your competitor. And this is a very common place to be able to drive sales from. The other thing that you have to consider is mobile.
Yeah, so we actually went through on there's the Amazon.com website. When you look again on the browser on mobile, you'll see actually on the image on the left there is if I just search for Apple Slicer on the Amazon website from my phone, everything above the fold, everything I see there is sponsored products, right? So the top result there, the sponsored products, everything there is sponsored. I have to actually scroll down before I see any organic results. And then also on the right side, when I'm looking at one of the product detail pages, there's the same sponsored products on that page as well. So on mobile, there's sponsored products even takes over kind of a bigger percentage of the page.
The biggest thing for people to remember when it comes to impressions is that impressions are the number of times your ad is shown. It has nothing to do with how much you pay or anything like that. So impression is just simply how often your ad is shown.
Exactly. So
all right, so let's jump into some other definitions.
Yeah, so there's obviously the impressions are showing up all over the place. Now, where you show up in the page sometimes depends on your bid amount, or depends a lot on your bid amount. So there's 2 terms called the bid or the default bid, depending on what level we're talking about. But the bid is just the maximum amount that you're willing to pay to get somebody to click on your ad. Now, the bid's not necessarily what you're going to pay for it because it's a competitive, basically a live real-time auction, but it's the most that you're willing to pay for any given click to get something on there.
Right. So we're not going to get into the whole algorithm. Nobody knows exactly how the algorithm works between an impression and a bid. But so let's move on to the next term, which is that now that you've bid for a term and you get an impression, if a user selects your ad, that's going to generate what's called a click inside sponsored product ads. And a click is when somebody clicks on your ad, right? So some of these definitions are fairly simple, and they're exactly what they sound like they are.
Yep. But the important thing about clicks is Amazon is a pay per click. That's what PPC stands for. It's pay per click. So when somebody clicks on your ad, that means you were actually charged some amount of money for it.
Right. And again, going back to the max bid, you will not pay more than the maximum amount that you stated that you want for it.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we're going to get into some mathematical equations here for you to determine how your ads are doing. And again, we're going to show you this all kind of in the end and wrapping it up, but it's important for you to understand all of these definitions and understand how they play in with the data and before we get into how to actually launch a campaign. So the first one is click-through rate.
Yeah, click-through rate's a really simple math. If anybody that can do division can figure this out. So in the example on the page here, you can see there was 7,449 clicks. And we had a little over 1 million impressions. So that's a 0.7% click-through rate. So it's just it divides the clicks divided by the impressions, and that gives you a percentage. That's called the click-through rate. And the really important thing about click-through rate is it's one of the ways that Amazon determines whether your ad was relevant, right? So if you're bidding on keywords or things that are completely irrelevant, you'll have a low click-through rate. If you have something that's really targeted, you'll tend to have a higher click-through rate.
So now that we know kind of our impressions, we know our clicks, we know our click-through rate, we can actually start to figure out how much we're spending. And so the next one is spend. Spend is going to be the total amount that you have given Amazon for your ads, the total amount of dollars that you've spent.
Yep. So every time somebody clicked on something, you were charged some amount of money. In our example here, our default bid was 80 cents. So we were charged some amount up to 80 cents. And then we just divide all those up or add all those up and total it up together. And that's the total spend for this campaign. So in this example, it's $3,543.
So now if you take that total spend and you divide it by the number of clicks, that's going to give you your cost per click. And so as Brandon said earlier, CPC is cost per click and Amazon is a cost per click. And ultimately, that's what you're doing is you are paying a cost per click. And so this is going to tell you whether you're spending the total max that you bid or some number underneath that.
Yep. So the cost per click in this example, if you did the math on your calculator, if you have it handy, you could divide 3,543 divided by 7,449. That'll give you your cost per click of 48 cents. So that's a dollar amount that you're charged on average for this particular ad group in this case. So when you're comparing, you might look at different things. You might say one ad group compared to another. Like the cost per click is a measure. When you're comparing one thing to another, it tells you how expensive or how competitive one thing is compared to another thing.
Yeah, and certain products are going to be significantly more competitive, have a higher cost per click than others. So now let's get into some of the numbers that are going to kind of tell you whether you're being successful. So orders, these are conversions. And this means that simply somebody saw your ad, they clicked on it and they bought it. Not to get overly complicated, but Amazon looks at your ads in a 1 day, 7 day, and 30 day. So your orders will actually grow over time as your sales continue to grow on a particular product.
Exactly. So that's well, it gets a little bit more nuanced than exactly how they calculate that, but people can buy things the week after they saw your ad, and Amazon does attribute those after the fact. So 1 day after your ads are run, you don't necessarily know all the orders that came from it. So that's why a lot of times we need to pay attention to these for reports for multiple days. The next column over on our thing is the sales dollars. So the sales is literally like all the money that people spent on your product after they bought them, right? So this takes into account if people bought more than one of a product. If somebody bought 5 of your product, the sales takes into that total revenue into account. But this is a really important measure for most sellers, right? They want to know if I'm spending money, like how many sales did it generate? So it's really critical for helping you understand how your campaign is performing.
Now, one statistic that Amazon does not actually calculate for you is the conversion rate. It's actually a missing statistic within that, but conversion rate is your conversions divided by your clicks. So that's going to tell you what percentage of the people that are clicking through to your ad are buying. And I think, Chris did a really good job of explaining this in the podcast that, you want your ads to mimic the conversion rate of your organic traffic. And so that's a good way for you to think about it. So if you have ads that are underperforming your organic traffic, you want to pay extra attention. If they're overperforming, you might want to invest more. But the real statistic that kind of Amazon throws in these definitions is what they call, and it's referred to a lot in the industry, is the ACOS. And I kind of think it's a little bit of a vanity metric, but it's an opportunity for sellers to really get an understanding of what their advertising cost of sale is. And so the advertising cost of sale is the last metric on this page, and it's looking at the revenue, the cost divided by the revenue.
Yeah,
and
the
so
ACOS is something we should spend a minute talking about here because it is pretty important. The really nice thing about ACOS is that it sort of wraps up, or it aggregates the rest of those things all together to tell you, like, as a whole, how's your campaign performing. So it takes into since it's kind of at the tail end here, it takes into consideration the bid price, or the cost per click, your conversion rates, your sales. It's kind of a holistic number to look at what overall, how is this particular thing doing. So it's really nice from that perspective. It's a one number that kind of helps you measure that out.
So before we move on to the next section, and we're kind of done with the main definitions of the terms in the reports, I just want to check in, Chris, and see if there's something coming through that we might have missed, or something that you and Scott want to kind of give a little bit more information on with in terms of definitions before we go into campaign organization.
I think the biggest two were just impressions versus clicks, right? And guys, the simple way to think about that, again, impressions are when your ad is shown. A click is just when somebody actually saw it and then clicked on it, right? So that's kind of the difference there. Beyond that, I think everybody kind of got it. The other one that I saw, Jeff, was sales, and they were just curious if sales is all of your sales or just sales from PPC.
It's just sales for PPC here. So
it's a direct conversion. It's a direct conversion of your PPC to your to the sale.
Yeah, well, let's clarify that a little bit more. When you're looking at it through Amazon's interface in these reports and in the reports you download, and anything that you see right now around sponsored products, the sales column is only sales that were attributed to advertising. You probably had more sales that didn't come directly from sponsored products, and it does not include those.
All right, so now we're going to kind of jump into campaign organization and kind of explain, because now that you understand the definition and the terms and how to read the reports, we really want to look at the campaign organization and understanding what does a campaign look like and how do all of these pieces kind of fit together when you're building your campaign. And so this is kind of the most complicated version of it, right? And we're going to break these down and rebuild this. So you've got all these kind of terms within the campaign of a campaign, an ad group, a keyword, a search term, a product ad, a negative keyword, a campaign negative keyword. So now we're going to kind of rebuild this and break these down from point to point. So let's go jump into the campaign organization. Brandon, you want to start that?
Yeah, so at the top of that, you'll see if you're in the sponsored products interface, like the top level thing that you create is called a campaign, right? That's a marketing term. But the campaign is really just a container, and it contains other things inside of it. But the important things about the campaign are that's where you specify your daily budget. So if you want to spend X number of dollars per day, you have to do that at the campaign level. And then also at the campaign level, we'll talk in more detail about what the targeting types means, but you specify at the campaign level whether you want an auto-targeted or a manual targeted campaign. So at the very high level, just campaigns, and they contain everything else inside of those. We'll talk a little bit more towards the end about how to organize things in different ways, but the concept here is just that the campaign is sort of the top level container.
So the next container after the campaign is the ad group. So how do we use an ad? How does an ad group relate to a campaign, and how does a user use that?
Yeah, so we'll use ad groups for a few different methods, and we'll talk about some specific strategies for these right now. But each campaign has at least one ad group, and you can create as many ad groups as you want. There's probably some upper limit to them, but most campaigns we see most campaigns that we see with people that are just getting started have one ad group in it. We're going to have some suggestions then how to create at least a few ad groups. But the ad group is just another way of subdividing up products or keywords inside of here. And the only thing you really specify at the ad group is just sort of a default bid amount, which can be overridden. So, but the ad groups just as a container for those product ads and keywords that we're going to talk about in just a moment.
And so I think one of the things to think about here, if you're going to create multiple ad groups, and I know Chris really gets into this in pretty detail, is that you're still maxed at your campaign bid. Because remember that the total budget is still set at the campaign level, not at the ad group level.
I mean,
so
your daily budget is still set at the campaign level.
right.
I think you said bid, but you mean that if you want to spend $10 a day, you set that at the campaign level, and all of your ad groups combined are still going to limit that $10 per day.
Great. So now that we have an ad group, we need to create ads for that ad group.
Yep. So ads are really simple on Amazon. If you looked at all those images we showed where your ad shown, it's basically your product image and your title. And then in different places, Amazon will show your ratings and a few other things associated with it. But you don't, like other advertising platforms like Google AdWords or stuff, you have to write creative copy and headlines and that. Amazon keeps it really simple. The only control you really have over that is what product you stick in it. And Amazon automatically picks the image and the title for your product with it.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest deal, is that you're just associating an ASIN or a group of ASINs to an ad group or to a campaign, right?
Yep, exactly. So this is just obviously if a seller has 100 products and they only want to advertise one or two things in a campaign, this is where you specify those one or two products you want to advertise inside of here.
And we're going to kind of hit on this a couple of times, but if you're new to this, we do recommend that you keep your campaigns associated to a single ASIN at the beginning, and you add more complexity as you learn, because to add a bunch of complexity at the beginning is going to make it significantly more difficult for you to be successful. Now, where a lot of people get tripped up is the difference between keywords and search terms. Now, Chris, he uses the term seed terms when he talks about keywords. So I want to make sure we kind of talk about both. And we're going to go through some definitions here of that. But the keywords are actually associated to the ad groups. And then there's a difference between keywords and search terms. And we have some examples to kind of show you what those differences are.
Yeah, so there's a really subtle difference, and it's really easy to get these confused because a keyword and a search term both has some English language text with it, and it's really easy to get them confused, but there's a subtle difference that's very important. So we want to make sure we flesh that out a little bit here. So when we're talking about keywords, we're really talking about the keywords that the seller told Amazon they want to focus on. So these are the words that you tell Amazon that your product are important about your product. They're what the seller thinks that people are going to search for. Now, the important thing that I'll mention about keywords, and there's a reason why this is important, but every time we're talking about a keyword, there's always a match type associated with it. So you'll always see the word broad, phrase, or exact next to a keyword. If it doesn't have the word broad, phrase, or exact next to it, you're actually talking probably about a user search term and not a keyword.
Yeah, and the easiest way to keep keywords and search terms from getting confused is that a keyword is a term that you enter. A search term is a term that a user enters when looking for a product. So let's jump to search terms and we'll kind of show the difference. And we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail as we keep going. So as we said, these are actual buyer search terms, and you can have one keyword associated to hundreds of search terms, depending on the match type that you've created. And we're going to kind of go through and explain all of the match types, but Amazon is taking your keywords and then they're associating search terms to it based on what the searchers are actually searching for. So that's the big difference between a search term and a keyword.
Yeah, you'll notice the search terms that we show here on the screen. People can read those, but you'll see that they don't have the word broad, phrase, or exact next to it. So these are ones that users are typing. And these are aggregated up to different search terms when we bid on them.
So the final piece of kind of the campaign organization is negative keywords. So Brandon, kind of what are negative keywords and how would a user use them?
Yeah, I mean, I think instinctively we kind of get what a negative keyword is here, but we put an example on here to make it maybe a little bit more concrete. So if I have a keyword that's a broad match keyword for the term apple slicer, and let's say my apple slicer is red, and I don't want to necessarily show my ad when people search for purple apple slicer, I could use a negative keyword, or negative exact match keyword in this case, to say I don't want to bid on the term purple apple slicer. And effectively what that means is I'm going to bid on all the other apple slicer terms, but I don't want to bid on the term for purple apple slicer. So it's kind of just a way of pulling out the ones you don't want to bid on.
And so we'll kind of see as we get into some of our examples as we move through here that negative keywords are a way to optimize your campaign. And there's some great ways to use negative keywords both at the ad group or at the campaign level. And so the biggest difference is if you're doing it if you have multiple ad groups, then you may want to apply that keyword to the campaign level. If you only have a single ad group, then it really doesn't matter. So let's kind of show them the whole thing kind of here together. Chris, invite you and Scott to jump back in here and see if we've kind of covered the campaign organization. And then we're going to really kind of dive into the different match types so that you understand what the different match types are and how Amazon interprets those match types.
Yeah, no, Jeff, so far, I just want to say the chat is blowing up. Lots of questions coming in. I think you guys are doing a great job breaking things down. I really do. And I like that we can see these mind maps and kind of like see how everything is kind of, flowing together and everything kind of funnels through. So I think so far, everything seems really good. I know there's a ton of questions coming in. We're going to have to definitely address a lot of them at the end. But no, I think everything is running smoothly, really, really smoothly. And we have a great turnout too today. I mean, there's well over 485 people live right now in the room, which is awesome. So guys, just keep your questions coming. I know Chris, he just Skyped me in between and said his hands are about ready to fall off, but I think he's gonna be okay.
We're gonna power through.
I'm going to try to hop in there too, but I got to tell you guys, I'm not a good typer, so that's not going to really.
Thanks you guys for watching that chat. I'm watching it just scroll here, and I can't even pay attention to what people are typing.
So no, Jeff, I think you guys are on a roll, so I say just keep rolling, brother.
Awesome. So what we want to explain next is what's called targeting type. And if you, and we're going to go through each of these to understand, but this is kind of as I think, Scott, you really said it, this is kind of the mind map that explains that, how there's two types of targeting. It's automatic or manual. And automatic, the easiest way to look at automatic is that essentially it's set it and forget it, right? You don't have a lot of control over it. And then manual is broken down into broad, phrase, and exact. And so we're going to kind of walk you through each of these now and give you some examples. Again, we're sticking with the apple slicer. That's our product, right? We know yours is the garlic press. Ours is the apple slicer. We all have to have one. We don't recommend, I guess we'll put in our disclaimer, right? Scott, you and I like to laugh about this when we see each other. Do not go and source an apple slicer. I wouldn't recommend anybody tries to sell apple slicers. It's a highly competitive product. Yeah. But for our ad, we ran an auto-targeted match. And so all we told Amazon was that we have an apple slicer and we want to run ads. We've told them nothing else. That's it.
So look at what Amazon tries to do, right? So Amazon doesn't necessarily know what keywords we rank for. So Amazon uses some magical algorithms, and we think those things contain things like your listing content. They take a look at all the words that you're using in your listing. They take a look at what people ultimately buy after they see your listing. Amazon has this image recognition stuff. Maybe they use some of that. They're trying to figure out what keywords people are going to use to buy your product. And you can see from our example here, it's kind of all over the map, right?
Yeah, because Amazon's goal is, for lack of a better example, Amazon's goal is to take spaghetti and throw it against the wall and see what sticks. They're using your budget to run as many ads and to see who's going to buy your product. So somebody's looking for a potato chopper, they're going to show your ad. Somebody's looking for getting rid of love handles, maybe because you have in your description.
That's actually a really interesting example because this particular product had the word handles on it, and you'll love it, and a few things like that. And so Amazon took the word love and the word handles, and they're showing your ad for getting rid of love handles.
That was me.
And ultimately, with auto-targeted, you don't have a lot of control over this besides assigning it to an ASIN. And Amazon is just going to run this. It's really easy to get these started, but it's typically expensive because you're basically paying Amazon to test things out. And so what we are really wanting you guys to learn is how the manual campaigns work. And so we're going to kind of build these, and then we're going to kind of show you how they all work. So the first one is a broad targeted campaign. And again, we're using the word apple slicer. Now, at this point, we're telling Amazon that we have an apple slicer, and we're telling Amazon the keyword that we want is apple slicer. And when we set a broad target, it's going to come back with search terms based on our keyword. So remember, our keyword is apple slicer, but it's deciding that a red slicer for apples is a broad target term, search term that somebody might use to find our product. And so in this example, you can see that the words can be added before, after, in between. It really doesn't matter. Amazon is keeping the word apple and slicer in some way, shape, or form in the keyword, or I'm sorry, in the search term, and associating it back to the keyword. So,
yep. So
Brandon?
you'll see in the example there, I highlighted the word apple and slicer, so you can see the other words that they're adding around there. You'll see, like, that's the important thing here is, like, we just told a broad match apple slicer. Anything the user searches that might contain the word apple or the word slicer, they're going to start showing up. Your ad's going to start showing up for.
And we're going to get into some optimization tips for how to do these. But for right now, we just want you to do that. So I see one question that came through that I want to address back on auto targeting. Can you flip back to that slide?
Oh,
you
yeah.
see on here the ASINs, the B01. That means that your ad has shown up on a product detail page for one of your competitors. And so it's not actually a term.
Yeah, those that say B00 or B01, those are product detail pages for other products. And so you could actually go look up that product and find what your ad's being shown on. It doesn't mean that somebody searched for the string B019SXMTE. Nobody actually searched for that.
Right.
This just means that that's how Amazon accounted for it, was they saw that somebody was on a product detail page for that product and your ad was shown.
Yeah, that's one of the impressions that we showed earlier. All right, so I saw that question come through in the chat a few times, so I wanted to jump into that. But let's go back to, so we started with broad, and broad is the widest manual campaign, and then the next is a phrase.
Yep. So the thing you'll notice about the phrase targeting is the word apple and slicer needs to be next to each other. So all the examples here you can see highlighted in there or bolded. Apple slicer is always next to each other. And then Amazon, like, users will search for other things that have additional words at the beginning of it or at the end of it. But all those contain the word apple and slicer next to each other in that order.
Right. So they might add a plural. They might add a plural to the word or something like that. But they're going to always keep the word apple and slicer. So it's a little bit of a next define of target. And we're going to talk about how to move your keywords to search term, how to find the search terms from your keywords and move them from broad to phrase to the last one, which is exact.
Yep. So exact, I actually think, like, Amazon might be better calling it very close match rather than exact, because they do include misspellings and plurals and prepositions. But for the most part, like, going back to this example, if we were to run these three match types for a apple slicer for a while, which we've done, the apple slicer exact targeted keyword will have maybe a dozen key user search terms under it. The broad match will have maybe thousands. So the more specific you get from going down the funnel from broad to phrase to exact, the fewer sort of search terms are going to be included to each one of those. And it's really important because as you get more specific, you can be more granular and specific in your bid.
So let's kind of show this all together now. So we've looked at broad and phrase and exact, and this is kind of a good slide for you to kind of keep on your desk. You know, maybe Chris and Scott can make one for Garlic Press, but this is a good way for you to just really simply be reminded of how each one sits within each term. Remember, the keyword for all of these is the word apple slicer. Everything in black is a search term. And so that reminds you of the difference between keywords and search terms and how broad, phrase, and exact match. So now we've really gone through all the definitions. I know that's a lot to take in, and that's really why we recommended that you just digest all of this and then maybe come back in the future to view it again. That's all the definitions. Now we're going to start getting into what do you actually do with all this, and how do you actually use all the data that Amazon's providing. So Chris, Scott, did we miss anything within definitions? Otherwise, we'll jump into how all this works.
The one thing I might, this is Brandon, the one thing I might bring up here about the broad, phrase, and exact is that the broad includes everything inside phrase, and phrase includes everything inside exact. So it's fine in many cases. You can just set a broad term for apple slicer. You don't need to set those other specific ones until you get more data. So a lot of times starting out a campaign, starting out with the broad ones are just fine.
And that's kind of how we talk about it as well. And I saw somebody asking, do you start out running them in all three? And I tend not to, because of exactly that, Brandon. Once I start to see that apple slicer is really performing, then I kind of move it to a phrase, which is where we're getting into some of the art versus the science of it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to kind of jump in here real quick because I know a lot of people have asked, and we've actually talked about this in the past. Is like, our initial campaign was a couple of different campaigns. One of them was an auto to start to really gather that data. But now talking with you guys and also just running our own tests, like we can kind of speed up that process by not using the auto. The auto is still going to give us information, but it's also going to give us maybe bad information that we don't really care to have. And then we're going to have clicks on that. We're going to have a spend that we wouldn't necessarily need. So we can almost speed up that process by using this. And I think using the broad, just for people to understand, and I think you're going to start talking too about beard versus search term here. So, and I think that'll really clarify things because people think that the keyword is the word that they're being searched for, which a lot of times it's not. And the broad is allowing us. I always talk about like you're digging for gold, you're mining for gold. It's like you're taking that one keyword to then attract all of the other keywords that are the real keywords or the search terms that you really want to show up for, not the keyword, the search term, because the search term is really what we're most interested in, right? I mean, we're interested in that versus just the keyword. And then that will start to allow us to start ranking and start showing up for some of these other search terms when we start to optimize and all of that fun stuff. So I just wanted to clarify that the auto campaign stuff is really just gathering data, but doing it this way is going to speed up that process and actually give you more data quicker. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that.
Awesome. So let's get into the art and science of this. And I'm going to have to give credit to you, Chris, because you kind of really explained this to me in the way you think. And I think this really helps. And, when we talk about like researching a product, we talk about there's certain factors that you're looking for and you want it to, be at a certain number of certain number of reviews, a certain BSR, right? There's these, you can really set definitive. And with sponsored product ads, it doesn't work that way. And so it's a little bit of art and a little bit of science. And the art part of this is that there's really no way that's right or wrong to do this. We can provide you guys some guidance and some rules and some ideas, but you have to kind of figure out what works for you and what works for your product. That's really the art side of this, is that you have to kind of figure this out a little bit on your own. There is a science side of this, though, which is that your campaigns are collecting data and you can get to a point of statistical accuracy. And that's where I kind of said, Brandon and Chris kind of geek out over the statistical side of it. And some sellers, their products might not ever get to a statistical accuracy. And so this is like, not to get political, but when you see a poll about, the presidential race or something like that, they always will tell you that there's an error rate, right? That it's within 3 or 4 points. And so the more data that you have, the lower that error rate is. And that's the science side of this. And if you actually let your campaigns run long enough and you collect enough data, they mathematically will tell you the right thing to do. It's a matter of whether the art side will let you, meaning that you'll give yourself enough time for the campaign to get to the point that it needs to get to.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. You can almost wait so long to get all the science stuff that but that really, you don't have enough money sometimes to spend to do that. So there's a balance to figure out when you want to take action and when you're comfortable with that.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of jump you guys through your first campaign, and Chris and Scott really talk about this, and they use the term panning for gold, meaning that you're trying to put as much data in at the beginning so that as you're sifting through the data, the gold nuggets are what's left. And so that's what we're trying to do. And the old way of doing this, and this is probably what a lot of people were taught, and Scott referenced it a minute ago, is that you run an auto-targeted campaign, you let it run for 10 days, and you eventually find your winning terms and you start moving them over. And you constantly have this auto-targeting campaign that you're kind of paying money to mine for gold. And ultimately, you're spending hundreds of dollars to try to find, 8 to 15 keywords that are your gold nuggets. I'm sorry, search terms. You're looking for 8 to 15 search terms that are your gold nuggets, and move them into a broad match or a phrase match of something like that. And that's kind of the old way of doing it. We're going to show you now a new way of doing it that's going to give you the ability to start slow and to learn from your data that's going to give you better results. So we recommend that you don't try to tackle your whole catalog at one time. You have to learn this. Even if you have been running sponsored ads and you're not, and you feel like you've hit a brick wall, you have to figure out your process. And so that's what we really want your action item to come out of this webinar, right? So Scott had kind of said, like, what's the one piece of action you want everybody to come out of this webinar with? And my action that I want you to come out of this with is, how are you going to put your first campaign together that matters? You've been running campaigns, but how are you going to put one together that matters? So let's kind of go through this. Our recommendation is that you skip the auto-targeting and you set up a broad match campaign with the keywords from your listing or your competitors. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that here in a second. Set up a pretty high daily budget, $15, $20, whatever you're comfortable with, and set up a high max bid. Now, the reason for setting up a high budget and a high bid is that you're trying to drive as many impressions and clicks to the search terms associated to the keywords that you've given. And then the big thing that we're recommending that's different than I think what other people recommend is don't select keywords that overlap. And when you do this, you're kind of stealing impressions from one another. So if you have the word apple slicer and you have the word apple core, do not add another keyword of apple slicer core, because the way that keywords work in the broad phrase, an apple slicer core will show up either under apple slicer or apple core. So you don't want to add another keyword.
Yeah, so let me address that for just a minute, Jeff. And the reason for that is just when you're starting out, you just get your data gets too segmented, right? So one of the things that we've seen people do is just use some keyword tool and put 1,000 different keywords in there. And if you have let's assume you spend 50 cents on each keyword on each click, and you have a daily budget of 20 things. That means you're only getting like 100 clicks a day. And if it's spread out on 1,000 key terms, you don't get enough traction on any one of those to really make a good decision. So the reason we suggest you don't do the overlapping ones is try and keep the data, try to keep more data being gathered on fewer things, and you can make better decisions on that.
So if you're looking for how do you figure out what these first couple terms are, you could use a tool like Scope, which is a Seller Labs tool that does a reverse ASIN lookup and shows you what keywords you're ranking for. You can manually do that, or you can use another keyword identifying tool. So, there are other tools in the market that can help you identify those. I just prefer the one that we sell. So that's the one I typically recommend. Once you've kind of got you're ready to start up your campaign, you're going to go into Seller Central, and you're going to go into advertising on the top and click on Campaign Manager. And this is where you're going to start to set up your first campaign. And so you're going to give your campaign a name. Again, you're going to set the daily budget. You can do an end date. I don't. And then again, we're going to skip auto targeting and just set up the manual targeting for this. Now, when you get to the next step inside Seller Central, it's going to ask you to select your product, and then it's going to also make some additional suggestions to you. Now, this is again where you want to make sure that you are not duplicating those keywords. That's the big thing that you really want to make sure you're not doing. You do not want to duplicate keywords. So if the keywords are already selected, like an apple slicer and an apple core, and they have apple cutter, then you don't need apple cutters with an S or an apple cutter slicer.
And here's another sort of place where this comes into an art a little bit, Jeff, right? So your suggestions that are apple wedger, apple slicer, and apple cutter, well, I might come in here and say, well, what if I just wanted to bid on the word apple then? Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that even more broad?
It's possible, but you want the terms to be relative to your product. And so if that general of a term works, it's something you can consider.
Yeah, and the part that I'll say is the part is, as the programmer who's trying to write some algorithms around this, the part that makes that really hard is I, as a computer program, don't really know that Apple is a name brand of a whole bunch of other things besides apple slicers. So this is where the human element kind of comes into that. Like a human would decide that bidding on the word Apple is not a good idea because that's such a competitive other keyword for Apple iPhones and Apple watches and everything else. So that's where a human really comes into this and adds some intelligence to it to say apple wedger, apple slicer, apple core are the ones that I do want to bid on.
Hey, Brandon, let me just say something there on that. I want to just highlight that, what you just said, because we can kind of gloss over that. But having you be part of this call in general is, to me, huge because you are a programmer, right? So you're the guy that can kind of write this stuff to make it, work. And that's really good intel for us to understand that if you were to just go after Apple, you might start showing up for Apple products, computers, and phones, and that type of stuff. And what you're saying is, if you can add
a lot of money on those,
yeah, and you can waste a lot of money on those. But if you're saying Apple cutter, well, that's probably going to weed out the ones for Apple computer products. Not 100%, but it could. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. I think it's awesome that we have you on here to be able to actually have that insight. And that's something I didn't really think about. And I think it's just a huge ad. So I just wanted to say
that's where a lot of this comes down to. A human kind of has to look at it and see it. The other thing, Amazon's not going to be stupid. If they show your ad 1,000 times for an Apple iPhone or something, then nobody clicks on it. They're going to learn that eventually, but you're just going to waste some money in the meantime.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of jump in there and say that. So cool. You guys are doing great.
Okay, so now you've created your first campaign. Your first checkpoint is really 3 to 5 days after your campaign has started. And the reason why you can't look really sooner than 3 to 5 days is that sales in Amazon are automatically delayed 48 hours. So going into your campaign the next hour or the next day does you no good. And what you're looking for in the first 3 to 5 days, to keep it really simple, you're looking for a couple of things. One, you're trying to determine if you have any immediate winners. In my term, an immediate winner in the first 3 to 5 days means that you've generated 10 clicks for a search term at the search term level, not the keyword level. You're also looking at the impressions because you want to make sure that you're starting to get enough impressions for it to matter. And you ultimately want to then maybe adjust your bid based on that. So if you're not getting a lot of impressions, if you're just getting, 10, 20 impressions for a keyword, you may need to increase your bid to maximize the number of impressions. And so this is kind of like you start a new campaign, the first week, the first 3 to 5 days, this is all you want to do at the beginning because you don't have enough data to really do anything just yet, but you need to start kind of peeking in on it and making sure that it's moving in the right direction. And I know that as we get through this, that Chris is going to have some stuff to add. So when you're looking at the keyword impressions, if it has several hundred, that's where you want to leave it alone. If it's less than 100, that's where you may want to look to raise your bid. And you do this all through what's called the search term report. And we're going to show you how to access that report here in a second. And that's where Amazon is going to show you. You can see this little clip from my report. This is the customer search term and then the keyword that it's associated to.
Yeah, so the thing I want to touch on here a little bit, Jeff, is that when we're talking about keywords, if you've got a few hundred impressions per day, that'd be kind of a minimum, I think. If you're getting started on a campaign and you've only got even fewer than 100 impressions, might mean your bid's too low. Right? If we're bidding on a term like apple slicer, where we know there's pretty good sales velocity around it and people are searching for it, if I've only got 20 or 40 impressions on that, that probably means my bid is too low, because you should be showing up more often than that.
Yeah. So you're looking for your keywords to be getting hundreds or several hundred impressions on a daily basis.
I mean, you might find somewhere you have tens of thousands of impressions within 24 hours in a day's period. So it depends on how high velocity it is. But our goal kind of of this early phase is to find the keywords that are a little bit more broad, that are going to get you plenty of impressions.
Okay, so now you really want to let your campaign sit for a longer period of time. Now, I know Chris says he only checks his once a month. Some people like to check theirs once a week. But remember, with sponsored ads, you need to be patient, and you need to let the data get collected over time. And if you start trying to make decisions too quickly, you're going to kind of mess with your own data and not let your data get to what we call a true relevance. And so a true relevance is when you have 50 clicks or more at the search term level. And if you have 50 clicks or more at the search term level, you can start to make actionable decisions that are statistically correct. And so this is where the science comes into it. Now, there is an art side of this as well, which allows you to make decisions before 50 clicks. But if you want the science to tell you the answer, then you really need to let the data collect to get to a point that you're making the right decision.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Real quick. I want to stop here for 1 second, because this is where people can get lost. Okay. What we're talking about, what these guys are talking about, is those 50 clicks are on a search term, not a keyword. So if you're looking at the main campaign, we're not talking about that one broad term that's gotten 50 clicks. We're more or less looking at those 50 clicks on the search term report. So if you have a broad term of, let's say, apple slicer, and you have, let's say it shows 50 clicks were made on those 50 clicks on the front end might be 50 different keywords or search term words. So what they're saying is, on the back end of that search term report, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but you're saying you want 50 clicks of data on the back end. So this way here, we can see which ones are getting more. So maybe one might get 10, one might get 15, one might get, 5. So maybe you can clarify that, just so people understand that, because that's where people can get lost.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where it comes into art and science, right? So there is no right or wrong answer. We're just recommending that the more data you get at the search term level, the more accurate your decision is. So I actually think, Scott, you did a good job of explaining that.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to just touch on that, because I know if we just skip by that will be coming back up. So I just wanted to highlight that while it was right here on this page. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, let me address that a little bit from one of the technical, more geeky people, I guess, in the room. Is like, the more data you get, the better, right? So I can use an example. If I have 3 clicks on it and 0 sales, I could take a look at that and say, oh, my conversion rate's 0%. I just want to turn that thing off. But what happens if the next 97 people that come on it all click on it and buy something, and you actually had a 97% conversion rate? It's just really hard to tell with so few clicks statistically what's better. This is where it comes down to art versus science a little bit, because it's definitely tending towards, if you had 3 clicks and 0 sales, that tends towards the lower end of things. But the more clicks you get, if you have 50 clicks and 0 sales, you can say more definitively that's something I don't want to be bidding on.
And you're looking at clicks over time, right? So this isn't 50 clicks in a day. This could be, it might take your product 5 days to get to 50 clicks. It might take your product 30 days to get to 50 clicks. So you need to look at kind of clicks over time.
Yeah, when we say we collect data, that's the really useful thing about all these things, is like, once you're running a report and you've grabbed the data, like, we've got more history about stuff, and that extra history can help us make better decisions over time.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of go through a little bit of a checklist here, because we covered a lot. And so these are some other things that you kind of, wait, I lost myself. Well, there we go. So these are kind of the other things that you want to consider when you're on your 10 to 14 day review. So there's a bunch of decisions that you can be making about your data: raising bids, lowering bids, moving keywords into other things, right? So there's a lot of kind of stuff you can be doing. You want to be looking at, again, your product conversion rate versus your sponsored ad conversion rate. So if your product is not converting, if you're getting a lot of clicks and it's not converting, you may want to adjust your bid on that keyword. But this is kind of, I know where Chris says, well, if you make that decision too early, let's say you have 10 clicks and no sales, that doesn't mean that when you get to 20 clicks, you won't have 4 sales and still be at a 20% conversion rate. And that's where the art and the science comes into this. If you have a really high number of impressions and a low number of clicks, that's really where you want to just let your budget just kind of run, because you might want to look at page optimization. You might want to look at, but you don't really need to change your bid because you're getting the impressions. If you have low impressions, if your impressions are decreasing, then you might want to increase your bid on that particular term so that you can get more impressions for it. And if you have a really high cost of conversion, then you may want to consider lowering your bid. Now, you have kind of like 3 options every time you make a decision. You can either choose to do it, you can choose to not do it, you can choose to raise a bid, lower a bid, or wait. And so that's where the art comes into it, and deciding, do you have enough data to make your decision at this particular point in time?
Hey, Jeff, real quick, I just want to jump in there and just say that what you guys had said earlier was patience. Is so many people, they'll start their campaign and a week later they'll want to turn it off because it's not profitable. Yep. So I want people to understand we're mining for gold. We're mining for the search terms that will help us, number one, optimize our listing better, but then also turn into sales. And then we can start to drill down and then optimize our pay-per-click for those search terms. So I just want people to understand, like, you have to be patient. It is going to require money, but also think about this. If you're running a promotion in any business, it's going to cost money in order to get sales or also get the data to see what converts and what doesn't. So once you figure it out, then it's a matter of putting in $1 and getting 2 out or more. So just patience is key in this. I just want to just really stress that.
And that's where you use ACOS, right? The advertising cost of sale. And that's where, you maybe are working on a 40% margin. And so you want to target 40% for your ACOS. But when you're getting started, you might be at 110% ACOS because you're essentially like a promotion. You're giving products away. That's a great example. And so you can see the first thing on my checklist with all of your campaigns is get the data and don't be too quick to move. I guess I should change that to be patient. That makes a lot of sense. Your real goal is to find what's working. You really want to find what's working and dive into that. And then as you find what's working, you want to start to move those search terms into a phrase match, which is kind of like the simple way to do things, or potentially a new campaign. So, and that's really the art, where the art comes into it, that you might want to take your winning keywords and move them into a new campaign and call it winning keywords. You may also want to use your negative keywords in broad to redefine your broad so that your broad is more specific to what you're looking for. And as you're making these changes, you want to do some rinse and repeat. And
there's definitely some opportunities in those broad match keywords to download the keyword or the search terms report and set negatives for some of those, like that Apple example. If we found weird Apple things, or the setting negative keywords at the broad level is usually a really quick way to optimize and reduce your overall spend.
So let's go into the search term data and kind of show how you get that. We talked about the search term report. So inside the sponsored product ad tool, there's a section called report. I forgot to put an arrow on this, but if you kind of mouse over it, they'll see in black, it says search term report. When you click on search term report, you actually have to request the report from Amazon. It's not something that Amazon has available the minute you go in there. When you actually request the report, you're going to get this message back that says, give us a few minutes. Once that's done, you have the ability to download the report and pull all of this data into Excel spreadsheets. And this is kind of where the challenge of sponsored ads today really kind of makes it difficult for people, because there's all this data in spreadsheets and they have to dig through all the spreadsheet data to slice and dice and find everything, because Amazon doesn't give you a really good interface. And so we really wanted to start off this by showing you guys kind of what you can do and how you can do it and how you can understand it. And, you know, everything we've showed you kind of up to this point, anybody that's on this could do this on their own. They don't need any tools to do anything. And Scott, if you think we're ready, we can kind of show them how to do this with a tool that will make things a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to kind of jump in here again and just say, like, what we just showed you is really high level, but then also we dug deep into some areas. We could obviously go a lot deeper, but why go too deep if you aren't going to get started or understand the basics, and then also just like how to get the gold, right? Like how to get those search terms that are the ones we want to focus on in the keywords and all that stuff. But I want to just say, like, everything that we just showed you is done manually. Like, you can do that manually, and I've currently done it, and Chris does it, and Chris actually, is pretty good at it because he's good with Excel and all that stuff. But it gets a little crazy. It gets a little confusing, especially when you start going multiple campaigns, ad groups and all of that stuff. Now, it's been a while since I've been out there looking for a tool that would actually help with this. And that's where I got talking to you. You and I have been friends for a couple of years now. And then you kind of alluded to that you guys had something in the works. And I said, well, if I could be a part of that, I would love to, because there's something I need to create here that is not available yet. And that's where Chris, Schaefer, who does know a lot about this more than I do, actually went ahead and started working with your team and started to give our insights of what we would want, and then starting to work through the beta and all of that stuff. So I just want to let everyone know, like, it's been a little while for me, because I've been wanting to wait for the perfect tool that I feel that will help take this and make it simple, especially for someone like me that doesn't like spreadsheets. And I also don't like having to jump in and out of different pieces of software, right? So you're in one software and then you got to jump out with that data and then plug it into another software. That was one request. So anyway, yeah, I think we are ready. And I think people will be excited to see what we have here. But again, just to remember that this can all be done manually. Like, everything that we just showed you can be totally done manually. So I just want to let you guys know that 100%. Tools are to make the job easier. It's not necessarily a thing that you have to have. So anyway, Jeff, I just wanted to kind of say that.
Absolutely. And we 100% agree. That's why we wanted to really come out and educate you on how to do it on your own if you don't want to do it using a tool. But we tried to solve a problem on our own, and I'll walk you through. I'm going to try to walk you through the tool quickly here. But what we were trying to do was we were trying to solve a problem, which is that you want to dive deeper into data, but you don't want to deal with all these spreadsheets. You want to be able to look at the data and take action without having to jump between tools, right? So from Excel into sponsored ads. You want an easy way to set up a campaign and to manage your campaigns. And then ultimately, we need some intelligence so that when the science tells us that something needs to be done, we can make decisions of what needs to be done. And so that's really where Ignite was born from. And I'm going to walk you through kind of our version of how to set up a campaign, and then offer a couple more pieces. But we bring you in and same type of thing. You find your product. Once you find your product, you're going to give us a target ACOS. So this is something that Amazon does not ask you for, but we're going to ask you for your target ACOS so we can actually manage suggestions to the numbers that you want. We're going to ask you if you want an auto campaign or a manual campaign, and we're going to ask you for your budget for the manual campaign. If you already have campaigns set up, we can tie to the campaigns you already have, so you would just see those in the list. When you set up your ad groups, you have two ways to set up your ad groups. You can manually do them, or you can do our suggested way. Our suggested way is to create a broad, a phrase, and an exact ad group, all within one campaign, so that as you're moving the keywords between those, you keep them in one campaign. You're going to set your default bid, and then we tie directly into our scope tool. So our scope tool is a product research and keyword identifying tool. It does the reverse ASIN lookup right on Amazon's page. And we actually tie that data into the Ignite system. And you can see that Brandon's actually built intelligence into the suggestions that he's making. So he knows that the apple core slicer peeler, that you've already identified those terms as keywords that you're interested in. So he's not recommending that we add that keyword. And so as we're looking at the keywords, we're actually deciphering some of that intelligence for you so that we're only moving relevant keywords that are not duplicates into your first campaigns. Then what we do is Ignite is going to run, right? Just like it ran before. And it's going to start to make suggestions based on your ACOS that you've identified. And we use two things. We use a confidence and an importance. And essentially, this is where we tried to marry art and science, for lack of a better term. And so the less confidence that you have means the less data that you have, and the less importance, meaning that is this going to really affect something, or is it a highly critical decision? And so you can actually change your decisions based on the slides of the confidence and the importance. And then we actually give you an automated way to add negative keywords, to move keywords between campaigns, to change your bids. And then, of course, some of our suggestions, you might get a suggestion that says, this keyword isn't driving any impressions. Do you want to raise your bid? Do you want to get rid of it? Do you want to archive it? Something like that. So we make a lot of recommendations. The other thing,
Jeff, real quick, I just want you to answer this directly, and I'm asking as the listener, but this directly connects into your seller's account without you having to leave. So basically, you're able to log into this dashboard, and it will control through the API to your seller's account. Correct?
Yes, in real time.
Okay,
so
that's
when you
important.
take an action on here, it goes right into sponsored ads and changes your sponsored ad account.
Okay, listen to what Jeff just said there. Okay, they've created a solution that you don't have to, and that to me is important because there was other ones that I've been kind of playing around with. A lot of people come to me with new software tools and they want me to promote them, but that was a hang up for me. Like taking the data from one platform, copy and pasting, and then bringing it over to your seller's account. It's just clunky. It takes more time. There's more room for error, all of that stuff. I like it that I'm in one dashboard. Everything is kind of here. I don't have to go into my seller's account for my pay-per-click.
Yeah,
just want to kind of throw that out there.
I think one of the things that we do that Amazon doesn't do in their system is we give you much easier access to the data. So we showed you earlier what you have to do to get to some of your keyword and search term reports. Ignite actually brings all of that data in. So this is the screen at the keyword level. So you'll see on here that it says core 73. So the keyword is cores. It's a broad match term, but there are 73 search terms associated to cores. And so if I clicked on the word cores and I go to the next page, I'm going to see now all 73 terms that are being shown for those search terms.
Which is huge, and I don't want to kind of gloss over that, Jeff. Christine and I were kind of laughing in the chat. She said, I like Excel. I said, I've built an Excel macro, and you and I talked about this. I have a friend that's kind of an Excel coding ninja, and so I've got the Excel side of it down. But comparing these two things and understanding how they interact, and then like Scott pointed out, getting it back into Amazon is just insanity. And so what you guys have done here is not a small feat, and I want to make sure that we don't just gloss over that.
Yeah, and I think that the problem that a lot of regular sellers had, right, more of like the Scott and Jeff problem, is that we don't know how to build Excel macro ninja stuff, and so we need a tool to do it. And so now we can get to the search term data and actually take action on the search term data right in the tool and pass it right into sponsored ads without having to go into our tool because of the direct connection. So yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. That's exactly what we were going for. So a couple of things, and then let's show you guys a little bit of a case study here. So there's a few things that Scope can do. A couple more tips that we want to kind of end with, which is, we probably should have mentioned this a lot earlier, but sponsored ads only work if you have a highly optimized product detail page. And so you have to, if your page doesn't tell Amazon what your product does, your ads aren't going to work. So you really need to start with that.
Yeah, this really comes down to the math of it, right? So if you can increase your conversion rate by 1%, like that's just magnified when you spend money on it. It helps dramatically to reduce your ACoS if you can increase your conversion rate a little bit. And on-page product detail page optimization helps significantly.
As you're getting started, you want to shoot for break even. That's where your ACoS equals net profit margin. You're just trying to generate sales. Remember, you're using sponsored ad to generate more sales, to increase your sales velocity, to move up search rank. And you want to, again, be patient and accumulate data so you can move things down the funnel. So when we talk about moving things down the funnel, we mean going from broad to phrase, phrase to exact. So let's see, I think we have a couple more tips. So some of the optimization tips that we have. So Ignite does a lot of these for you. It actually automates the messages. They come up as suggestions for you. But you want to continually move bad performing keywords or bad performing search terms to negative campaign terms. And so that's, generating clicks, but no sales. Again, you want to increase bids to increase impressions, and you want to add more keywords to get more impressions. And so you can kind of go through this rinse and repeat where you go and look at another competitor's listing and find some more keywords that you want to add back to the top of your mining funnel, because you constantly want to be mining to find new keywords that can be driving you sales. And I think the last part to really kind of cover is campaign organization. And this is definitely the art side of it, not the science. But for most sellers, we're recommending one product per campaign. And so if you have a product with multiple variations, that would all be in one campaign. But similar products should be in different campaigns, because you're trying to because again, you're setting your budget at the campaign level. And so you want to always have kind of a manual learning campaign with that reasonable budget. And then you want to have kind of your winning campaign, which is as you're moving it down the funnel to broad and phrase.
Yeah,
so
that gets a little bit further in the longer term, I think, on that slide. So that's start with just a manual learning campaign to just begin.
And this is where, as we go through this and we teach you more within the amazing seller community, we're going to get into the more advanced strategies for the people that are ready for that. So let's take a look at an example. So this is a real case study. The seller was selling through the old way, auto targeting, from November through February. And then the new way is at the end of February. Now, this is a screenshot from Ignite, and you can kind of see some of the suggestions that are on there as well. But let's look at the numbers, because I think this is what really tells the story. So in the old way of doing things, he wasn't spending a ton of money, $71 in sales, but he only generated $1,400 in sales off of a $71 spend. But when he went to the new way of using his competitors' data and his data, and he started mining for these through manual campaigns, he was actually able to increase his spend significantly, even though his impressions were lower, but he was able to increase his sales revenue. So he went from 11 conversions over almost 3 months to 80 conversions in 3 weeks. And so that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to stop doing it the old way. We're looking to stop doing it through Amazon's recommendations and doing it through the data that we know about our product. So I think with that, let's flip to the last slide,
Jeff,
and let's bring on the questions.
Go back really quick for me.
Yeah.
The thing that you're not pointing the arrow at, and it's the first two things that jumped out to me, and you probably know what I'm going to say here. The two columns to the right of that arrow had massive jumps too. He's not just selling more, but his ACoS went down, so he's paying less to do that. And his conversion rate went from 2.5 to 11.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting about this slide is, like Jeff said, that was a 3-week period. Or this old one, it was almost 2+ months. This was in 3 weeks, so the seller actually ran out of stock because he was used to selling a couple a week, and he went to selling 20 a week.
Right. He tripled his conversion rate, basically. Well, just over tripled his conversion rate. He lowered his ACOS, so he's selling significantly more and paying significantly less to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is probably where we should put the asterisks of, past results are not indicative of future success, but we have seen this repeated over and over again by sellers changing their techniques. And that's really where, I came to Chris and Scott and said, listen, we want to teach this technique. We want to show you guys the way to do it without using our tool. But here's somebody that did it and used our tool, and look at the results that they got. So this isn't just theoretical. We think this will work. This is actual campaigns that are working for people. So I know there's a lot of questions. I know we've kind of lit up the question board. And so, we do have a special 30-day free trial for everybody on this. As part of the bonus of that, we're actually creating a sponsored ad mastery Facebook group. Actually, I don't want to take credit for this. Scott is creating this through the Amazing Seller, and we're going to help kind of moderate it. And Scott, you can probably talk a little bit to all the training that you're going to be providing.
Absolutely. And this is just kind of just came about as we were kind of going through this, and we're like, you know what, there's a ton of training that we are still going to be providing. This here was like the kickoff. And I think that now that we've got all of these questions that came through, probably at this point, hundreds, if not a few thousand by the time this thing ends, but there's a lot of questions. And a lot of them are probably similar, but there's going to be ongoing questions. Everyone's campaigns are going to be a little bit different, or maybe they're going to have questions on certain things after they run this stuff. So what I wanted to do was take people and bring them to a community that could support each other. And our idea right now was to really just keep it to people that are using the tool. So this way here, everyone's kind of on the same page. We don't have different techniques and strategies coming in, although we're more than welcome to experiment, but really we can then talk the same language as we're doing this. So I decided, you know what, let's just go ahead and create our own Facebook group. And that isn't 100% even created yet. We're going to be doing that this week. And then what we're going to do is be inviting people in. And as of right now, it will be free to everyone that does go into the 30-day free trial. And then from there, we're going to be doing additional training. I've already made a bunch of notes. There's a bunch of supplemental videos that I'll probably be creating, Chris will be creating. And then this way here, it'll help through this process. We're going to do Facebook Lives all this week. And then what we plan to do is once it's all said and done, we're going to take all of this training and put it into its own little members portal. So this way here, people have access to it. And then that conversation will be focused over into the Sponsored Ads Mastery Facebook group. And then that way there, everyone's not talking about a variety of things. It's really sponsored ads and about this whole, strategy and maybe case studies and maybe split testing and all of that fun stuff. So that's what we're going to do. But anyone that wants to take advantage of this 30-day free trial, head over to theamazingseller.com/ignite. And you can do that. And again, it's about patience. That's why we're giving you 30 days to start collecting that data and start mining for that data and those gold nuggets, because I feel that in 30 days, you should have a good understanding of how everything kind of works. You start to have some of that data. And again, just to remind you guys, I am affiliated with Seller Labs. We are, semi-partnering on this in a sense that I will earn a small commission from that. So my whole thing here is to give you as much value as I can for free, whether you buy this tool or not, right? You can do this stuff. But if you do use the tool, it will make it a lot easier. And I always go back to my construction days. I could put a roof on a house with a hammer and some nails, but I can do it a lot quicker with a nailer and an air compressor and all that stuff, right? It makes it a lot faster. So it's the same thing here, except a little bit more data-driven than a shingler. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. We are going to be doing a lot more training on this, not just myself. I'll be having Jeff come on, Brandon come on, and any other experts that we were able to reach out to and have them come on and share some more knowledge inside of this private group. But again, if you want to be part of that group, all we ask is just give the tool a try, the 30-day free trial, and that is theamazingseller.com/ignite, and that'll take you there. There's no obligation really, other than just give it a try. I think you guys will love it. That's all I got right there, Jeff. I know we got a ton of questions. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I'm super impressed by the people that can tell which hotel I'm at.
That is impressive.
That's pretty impressive. The number of people that have asked me if I'm at the SLS in Las Vegas. So it's pretty.
They're going to hunt you down. They're going to figure out what room you're in and just find you.
I give you credit. So yeah, if you happen,
looks
if
like
you're
the 19th
live,
floor.
If you are live, actually it is the 19th floor. How did you? That was a totally random guess. You're right. I'm on the 19th floor. Come on by. Knock on the door.
Just every door on the 19th floor. That works.
So yeah, no, I think that. So there's people are asking, what's the cost? It's a 30-day free trial. We charge you based on what we call managed campaigns, meaning that you're looking for Ignite to make recommendations for you. It starts at $39 and it goes up. Follow the link. We can post the link back in there. If you go to, just to tell you the honest truth, if you go to sellerlabs.com and you click on Ignite, you're going to be put on a waiting list. So if you go through Chris's link, you bypass the waiting list and you automatically get in. So we have put the tool on a waiting list because we knew we were going to get a big influx of people that are joining from this webinar, and we want to make sure that we can manage it all. And so if you want access right now and you want access immediately, go through the link, theamazingseller.com/ignite, and you won't have to go through the waiting list. And yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much, covers it, and happy to go through all the questions. And remember, keep commenting because we're going to give away 6 months of Ignite for free. And we'll give away, I don't know, how many hundred people were on the webinar? 400, 500?
We had about 673 show up and about 510 concurrent, and there's 450 still on right now. So
awesome. So let's give away 5. Well, I'll give you 5 shirts, and you can give them away however you wish.
Sounds awesome. We can definitely do that.
Yeah.
I think Chris Schaefer, we might have to get back in here. I think he might have got booted out, so we're gonna have to get him back on. But we can go ahead and we've got a bunch of questions coming in. And guys, if there's any questions we don't get to, what we're gonna do is we're gonna definitely be answering a lot of these on these Facebook Lives all week long. We're going to be showing up every single day this week at 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be sending out more notifications because you guys are registered, so you guys will get those notifications. And definitely going to want to listen to this replay, probably for sure. Fingers crossed that it recorded. I'm pretty sure it did. But yeah, we are going to we're going to get rocking and rolling here, Chris. If you want to go ahead and maybe start with the questions, I know there's a pile of them, but maybe we can dive into those and. That'd be cool.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that now that I'm back. I think I got kicked out of the room for a minute there. Jeff was just dominating and talking, and it dropped me.
Scott,
no,
we don't need that at times.
Jeff got it. There's a couple questions about Ignite itself, so let's kind of dive into those really quick. First of all, Jeff, there's a bunch of people saying it's asking them for a coupon code. If they're going through the amazingseller.com/ignite, do they need any sort of code, or do they just get the 30-day free trial?
So I see Brandon's working on something there. So
they actually don't need to put in a coupon code. It's 30 days free, but it doesn't actually say that on the page. We changed it to a 30-day free trial just for you, and the page doesn't say that yet. So if you
just mind you too, I did a little arm twisting for that 30-day free trial.
That's right.
Yeah, so there was a lot of arm twisting. Jeff had to not get the presidential suite at the SLS.
So when you go to sign up, it's going to make it look like you have to pay $39 or whatever the prices are, and just go ahead and sign up, and I promise you're not going to get billed. You'll get 30 days.
I believe at the top of the page, the top
just
left,
select any plan. Any plan that you select will give you a 30-day free trial. You will not be billed for 30 days.
And guys, there is
I think what people are looking for is they're looking for a free option. And so you have to select a plan, and then you don't get billed for 30 days.
Gotcha.
Because literally Scott twisted my arm last night and we changed this. So we just said, so that's how the free trial works is you have to select a plan, and it's good and you won't be billed for 30 days. And if you get billed on the 30th day and you hate our program, email us and we'll still give you a refund. Like we're a pretty stand-up company like that.
And if you guys are looking for an easy option, the upper left of that landing page, it says sign up for a 30-day free trial. Then you still have to pick the plan, but that way you know you're going through the right button there as well. Bethany says, I registered for Ignite last Friday. How do I go about creating my account again through the link so that I can have access and not be on the waiting list? Do we have a place that she can email and we can get her kind of set up? Or
support at sellerlabs.com. That's the best way to send any of that stuff.
Christy says, my listings are syncing as we speak. I love hearing that. Terry says, I won't be getting my product until May. How long is the free trial offer good for, Jeff?
You know what? This is a standing offer to the TAS community. Our goal is to be working with you guys to educate you. So when you're ready, we'll be here. We understand that sponsored product ads come at a proper time in your business.
Yeah.
And so you need to, be at that right time to be using it. So when you're ready, we'll be here. We're not going anywhere. We've been around for a long time.
I was going to say, Jeff, and I just want to kind of just say that, there's no it's not like we're not saying it's like a limited time. You got to hurry up and go do it. So this way here, we're not putting any of that scarcity on you where you got to oh my gosh, if you don't do it, you're going to, lose everything. What we are saying is, when the time's right, use it, but then also that will give you access to our group that we're creating so we can have that conversation, so we can help you further, so the training will become available, so you can be part of that, all of the community stuff that we're going to be doing inside of there. So, and as of right now, I mean, we've talked about this in the past a little bit, but, depending on how well that goes, that may be, a paid group at some time. You guys will never have to pay for that group. So once you're into that group, you're in. So just want to say that right now, that's kind of in beta for us. We're just trying out this thing to see if it's going to be able to be manageable, if we can handle it, if Jeff can handle it, if his team can handle it, and if people love it, and if they do, we might have to keep people out. And the way that you usually keep people out is you have to charge a little bit of money to kind of keep the tire kickers from coming in. So
so I see one question that's come up a couple of times is the question of, is Scope included with Ignite? So I want to be very clear. Scope is its own tool. And but we've integrated it into Ignite. So if you pay for Ignite, there are features of Scope inside of Ignite, but that doesn't give you access to all of Scope. If you happen to already have Scope and you already use one of our other tools, we do have what we call Seller Labs Pro, and just go ahead and email support at sellerlabs.com and tell them that we're on the webinar and you're interested in Pro, and that's the ability to kind of buy all of our tools at one time, and we can kind of set you up with that. But I still would have you go try Ignite, for 30 days and give it a shot, and then you can decide whether you want to upgrade to that.
Yeah, as far as Scope goes too, I know I don't know if is it still running, Jeff? Do we still have that special deal for people in the TAS community? So if people wanted to take advantage of that, we do have a special offer for Scope, which I haven't even publicly announced anything on that yet. So you guys are kind of hearing it for the first time. But I'm going to be doing some training on that too. I've been playing around with the tool. I really like it. It's so much better than anything I've used in the past. It's very quick. It's clean. It's just a great tool, and the data is really awesome. So theamazingseller.com/scope, and that will take you to that special page. And then you can go and get that discount there. So if you just follow through that, it will be an affiliate link. I will earn a cup of coffee. Totally transparent with you guys. But it's I'm going to be providing some more training for free to you guys. I'm going to be actually giving you guys a walkthrough and all that stuff. It's on my calendar to do, so it's going to be coming soon. And I'll post that inside of the Sponsored Ads Mastery Facebook group that we do as well. So any of that Scope training, I'll do that there too.
The other question that I saw a couple times, Jeff, is this just for Amazon.com, or will this work across kind of the global accounts?
Right now, Ignite is only for Amazon.com, but it's on our roadmap to. I'm gonna make Brandon's head explode, but it's on our roadmap to expand it international as well as to hopefully get AMS in it as well.
Yeah, we're actually just waiting for approval from the sponsored product team to do European marketplaces, and that should be pretty quick. So I sent an email to him on Thursday or something. I haven't heard back.
Cool.
We just really need to. We really feel the need that we have to do. We really need to do these through APIs, not through scrapes. and that's just the best way to be doing it. That's the safest with everybody's data. And I think that's something important to touch on, right? Because you're giving us access to a lot of your data, and as a company, we have a lot of protocols and stuff in place to protect your data. And what I like to tell people is we're a U.S. company. We follow U.S. laws, and we protect your data like it's our own. And so your data is safe with us, and our goal as a business is not to grow our Amazon sales, it's to grow our software sales. And so that's how we've been so successful over these years.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to ask here is I wrote it down. Someone wanted to know about if they could use the tool for an outsourcer, if someone wanted to manage their campaigns.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get to that. I mean, I think, Scott, you and I kind of talked about that, that's kind of one of the goals at the end of this week, is to have all of this content and then to try to put it together into a train the VA type of thing. And so right now there's not anything set up in our system in terms of like permissions. Mm-hmm. So you would have to give them access to managing your whole sponsored ad account. Mm-hmm. But as long as you're okay with that, then absolutely.
You definitely can connect multiple marketplaces. So if one person was managing multiple marketplaces, either if that's one seller managing a bunch of their own marketplaces, or an agency or a VA or something managing multiple people, that definitely works. There's just a drop down in the corner where you have to select which marketplace you want to be in the context.
Okay.
So here's another just kind of point on that, Jeff, in terms of like training the trainer and all that stuff. PPC, and I'm sure I'm going to give Brandon a heart attack when I say this, just like you do, Jeff. But before Ignite, it was a giant pain in the butt. Scott, how much did you enjoy looking at your search terms report?
I hated it, and that's why I was always contacting you to figure out a way to.
So you had me look at your search terms report, right? You outsourced your search terms report to me.
Yeah, basically. That's why I became your friend.
And with some of that's why we're friends. That's the only reason we're friends. With a lot of the features that you get inside Ignite, the thing that's really cool is you can take what would take me, someone who knows what I'm doing and has like a fancy Excel macro and all that stuff, and you can do it at the click of a button. You can move keywords around. You get the suggestions, right? So you're getting kind of a little VA with you that says, hey, this is, and what they're doing is they're looking at your data and they're saying, based on what we know, this is good, this is bad, do more of this, do less of this. And it's some of the things that Brandon and I have had some long conversations about. And so you may not even have to outsource it in a lot of cases where you wouldn't want to have touched it before. You can now use Ignite and get some of those same suggestions that I would give you, Scott, by looking at your search terms report and go, this one's good, this one's bad. Ignite's doing that for you. Mm-hmm. And so you can just start to make those decisions on the fly. Obviously, if you want to outsource it, you can, but they've kind of gamified PPC a little bit and made it a little bit more chewable for most people.
Well, let me tell you that the target of what we're trying to do is that we offer the suggestions on there, and our target is that you can manage your entire campaign from just those suggestions and not have to go look at detailed reports. So I love that. Getting to that point where we actually just need enough customers on there to start clicking I approve or I reject these for us to have more confidence in our suggestions.
Cool. All right, Chris, you want to dive into some questions? I know we got a bunch in the queue, and I know we'll stay on about at least another 15, 20 minutes if you guys are cool with that. Are you guys cool with that, or you guys got to drop?
No, I'm good. That works for me.
Cool.
We have a couple people who are just saying, I got an oops error page when I tried to sign up. Guys, if you do have any issues, Jeff, you said it's support@sellerlabs.com, right?
Yep. And my guess is Brandon's watching the logs.
I'm actually watching the access logs right now. I'm seeing some errors pop up, so we'll get those addressed.
It's a good thing we got a programmer on the call.
So we got a couple of variations of this question. I know Dr. Mike was asking and Ava was asking, and Brandon and Jeff, I want to get your opinion on this as well. If we have multiple variations, so we have a water bottle and we have a blue water bottle, a red water bottle, and a clear water bottle, how would you suggest starting to run sponsored product ads for that? Do you run it to all three? Do you put them in ad groups? Do you put them in campaigns? How would you guys suggest that people start to run for those three variations?
It's one product with multiple variations on the product detail page.
Correct.
Yeah, I would create that as a single campaign and put all of your product variations inside of the one campaign. You'll actually notice when you go to add a product to Ignite, it actually adds all the variations by default all the variations for a single ASIN are all essentially grouped together. So some of the things we actually do in Ignite actually measures your organic sales in addition to that. In order to do all that, we have to sort of group them together anyway. So,
and the way you kind of had to handle that before Ignite was you either had to run only one, which was my suggestion previously, kind of start with one variation, the one that you know is going to sell, it has the highest conversion rate, or it's the lowest price one, right? Or kind of separate them into different ad groups and then look at your search terms report and try to piece it back together. And what these guys have done on the Ignite side is you are pulling all that data back out for them, correct, Brandon?
Yeah, so they
like can see not just what search terms are working, but what search terms are working for which variations.
Yeah, so we can get to that level of detail. For the most part, I would say Amazon does a really good job of optimizing that. So if somebody searches for red water bottle, Amazon's going to rotate through those 3 different water bottles you have and show you the red one, and they're going to figure out over time that the red water bottle, when somebody searches for red water bottle, is the best performing one.
And this is where it's important that your product detail page is correct, right? So if you've got a product detail page and you're saying that your red water bottle is also yellow, then you're going to start showing up for yellow water bottle, but you're not going to convert because people are going to get there and they're not going to see yellow water bottle. So I know that's something, Scott, you and I talked about a lot, and I know you speak about it often, is you've got to start with an optimized product detail page. That's where you've got to start.
Yep. At least if it's clean in the beginning and we can add to it. But if you just start to throw random stuff there because you did a scrape and that person's listing had, free plus shipping Prime or whatever, and then you're just throwing it in there to have it in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the thing that you should have in there. So you just got to be careful with, and I think that we talked a lot about even using Scope or any other tool, or even just not using a tool, just using like what you think is good words or, keywords. But if those words are not relevant, it's going to actually hurt you versus help you. So we guys got to be careful with that, because relevancy is to me, even moving forward, is going to be even more critical.
Lee wants to know if he has an existing manual campaign, can he just port that into an Ignite campaign? How does that work?
Yeah, so technically what we do so Ignite has this thing called an Ignite Managed campaign, which is really kind of a grouping of automatic and manual campaigns we can group together. So the way you would do that is you would go to create a new Ignite Managed campaign, select the ASIN in there, or select the product that you want to advertise. And I think that's on step 3 of the process. You can say, instead of creating a new manual campaign, I want to associate it to one of my existing manual targeted campaigns. And it will show up and it will say, here's an existing manual campaign for this product. And it'll be one of the options on there. Which
is really kind of cool for a reason that Scott and I have talked about in the past, right? Because you have different types of campaigns and different ad groups, which Brandon, you explain very delicately in a very developer way, which is like, they're just boxes that you put stuff in, right? Like that, and that's all that they are. But until you had something like Ignite, it became a mess to manage, especially, and somebody I think said they have like 25,000 SKUs, right? Could you imagine creating a separate campaign for each one of those if you have variations and all of that stuff? And what Ignite allows you to do is, inside of the Ignite interface, any number of campaigns or ad groups that you have for that product all show up in one dashboard for you. So you have water bottles, garlic presses, apple peelers or corers. What's the apple core? Whatever those are, it groups any number of campaigns or ad groups that you have into that Ignite Managed campaign and lets you look at them in one place, which is really, really cool and extremely powerful.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things, I guess, okay, you heard the geeky way of describing it. Now I'll give you kind of the how Scott and I look at it. You sign up, it connects with Amazon. It's going to get all of your products and all of your sponsored ad data, and then it's going to let you pick a product, and then you either create a new campaign or you associate it to something you're already doing.
Rafa says, you said you have a minimum statistical significance of 50 clicks for a search term. What is the sample that you're considering? The thing is, the US market is bigger than Europe. I'm wondering about the sample size when you compare 50 clicks against the European market. Brandon, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think this comes down to one of those things, like I'd rather have more data than I wouldn't. But I think Scott mentioned this earlier, like gathering data is also costly, right? So you have to figure out, like in Europe, we might say, like, there's not going to be any statistically less relevant with 25 clicks, but we might have to lower that down to 25 clicks or something when you're talking in maybe the UK or Germany, because there's just not the volume of traffic that there is in the US. Either lower the threshold from 50 to 25 or whatever that is, or expect that it's going to take twice as long in order to do that. So be even more patient.
And that's one of those things where it is that line of art versus science, right? You can take less and take away from the science side and move more towards the art side if that's what you want to do. Just keep in mind that the more data you let come in, the more relevant you're going to be, and the higher the chance that whatever decision you make is going to be the quote unquote correct one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let me point out one more thing about Ignite that makes it really cool too, is like with all the Amazon reports, they're basically limiting you to 60 days worth of data, which 60 days is quite a bit of data. But for some of those longer tail ones or some of those search terms that don't get searched as frequently, like we can actually accumulate data, and Ignite just saves it forever. We're not limited to the last 60 days. So if we can accumulate data over the last 100 days or even a whole year worth of data, we've got a much better idea what the conversion rate was for longer tail terms. And so we're just, when you plan for Ignite, we're just collecting and storing that data, so we'll make better suggestions.
That's actually huge. And I want to just kind of highlight that, because if you pull a report, like you said, you got 60 days, and then you're kind of using that in your spread Excel sheet. And I think Chris is probably, I don't know, Chris, do you have a hack for that? Can you take all 6 reports and then compile those all into one?
If you pull them exactly 60 days apart, then yeah.
Yeah.
But that's,
me personally,
that's the problem, right? And that's why, Jeff, when you and I were talking on Friday, I said, I don't really look at it more than once a month because it has trailing 60 days worth of data. So, and it's actually 2 days behind. So if I pull a search term report right now, it would be good from Saturday to the 60 days previous to Saturday. So if I look at it every week, I'm only actually getting 1 more week's worth of data, which is cool if you have everything else, but not necessarily relevant if you only have that rolling 60 window, which is something, Brandon, that you just mentioned that you fixed in Ignite.
Yeah, I mean, I can get really geeky about how this works too. Like you'll find some long tail stuff where if I'm searching for iPhone 5S case, which has a really, really high velocity or whatever, I can get 1,000 clicks in a day on that, and I can make decisions in 1 day. I don't have to wait a week or 60 days. Like that's where it gets a little bit geeky and a little bit maybe a little too complex for talking to a new seller about this. But Ignite's making suggestions based on the most recent relevant data.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I want to make sure everyone's very, very clear on is that and this is something, Chris, you and I have gone back, like we've been talking a lot all weekend, and as we're preparing, it's like everyone has to realize there's still work for them to do. This isn't a set it and forget it tool that's just going to go do everything for you. And I think, Chris, you even said I would never want a tool that does that.
I've tried them. They don't work because, and there's a reason for that, Jeff. And we've been talking about this nonstop, and people are going to get sick of hearing me say this, but it's not science. It's a mixture of art and science. And when you try to come at it with a purely scientific approach, it doesn't work necessarily.
Yep.
Right. Right. And that's why you have like that confidence interval, and you're saying 50 clicks tells you it's relevant. You can move it with less than that. Right. Because if you're always waiting for 100% relevance, most people don't have the pain threshold for that when you're spending $2 a click, right?
Right. And so if you only have one product, listen, if you followed the methodology and you have one product that gets 10 sales a day, you might, like, sponsored product ads might not work for you. You might have a product that's so niche that it's just going to take you way too long to ever get the data. You have to kind of go in and experiment and figure it out. What our tool is going to do is make that data a lot easier for you to digest. And then we're also going to make some of the suggestions to you so that when the science does come into play, it's pointed out to you so you don't have to build, super cool macro ninja stuff.
You don't have to hire people to build you stuff that should already exist and does already exist now in this case.
Hey, Chris, real quick. Someone had wanted, I think Angela, wanted to know, is Ignite going to choose keywords for us? And the answer is kind of, but Scope is really going to be the one that will help us more with that, correct?
So actually, Scope is integrated. That screenshot we showed you was actual Scope data integrated into the campaign creation process. So you don't need an extra. There's other reasons to use Scope, but if you have Ignite, you get that data, and we are going to make keyword suggestions to you. Brandon's actually built a pretty cool algorithm that helps do some of the things that we talked about so that you don't end up with the duplicate keywords.
Gotcha. So really, for scope, for people to understand this, is really we're going out and trying to recruit and find other keywords that we could use as potential attracting, more keywords into it. But the tool itself will take the data, whether it's the search terms, and then that starts pulling in and then start giving us suggestions from an algorithm.
Yes. So it's making its suggestion. Brandon maybe can correct me if I'm wrong, but Ignite is making suggestions based on your ASIN or your competitor's ASIN for keywords.
Gotcha.
Then you take the data as you run the keywords, right? That's your mining for the gold.
Yep.
And that's going to start to generate the search terms that you'll start to move through to broad phrase and exact. So, the actual the actual search term suggestions that you're referring to are coming from sponsored product ads, but you would use Scope totally independently to be doing reverse ASIN lookup, product listing optimizations, and things off of sponsored product ads. If you so need.
Right. Gotcha. No, I think that's cool. And actually, I'm learning more as we do this too of what the tool actually does even more than I thought it did. So it's pretty awesome because that's pretty cool. Like you're being able to now take the data and then you're having more suggestions brought in through the tool using Scope's technology, but yet you can use Scope independently to then go out and scrape more and find more. Really mine another batch of dirt in a sense, and then we're going to find some good rich soil, and then we can go ahead and we can filter through it. I always like using that analogy, Jeff, because I'm a Gold Rush fan. So I'm sorry for using that analogy.
No, it's fine. I mean, you had shared that with us beforehand, so we're trying to kind of stick to.
And he makes fun of Brandon and I for getting nerdy. He's over here talking about Gold Rush.
I haven't seen Gold Rush for 3 or 4 years. Is that still on?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, man. It just wrapped up the other night.
Todd is the guy's name?
Oh, Todd Hoffman lost his shirt this year. He only barely got 1,000 ounces.
I haven't watched that for several years.
1,000 ounces. Sounds like I'm better off doing sponsored ads on Amazon than I am mining for gold. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Bella says, I've done PPC for a while now. I have an optimized listing and title. I have professional photos, but my sales seem to be dropping fast. My ACOS is in the mid to high 30s, and I don't know what else to do, but PPC doesn't seem to be helping. If I lower my bids, impressions suffer as well. Please help. So there's a couple things on this, Bell. The first is we can never assume that our title and listing and photos are optimized. We have to always test that assumption. So that would be one place that I would start. Start maybe testing some of your photos, test some of those backend search terms, some of those kinds of things. In terms of how PPC can help you there, it sounds like you haven't kind of pruned back that tree that grows from each of those keywords, right? It sounds like you need to start looking either in a tool like Ignite or at your search terms report. And guys, feel free to jump in if you feel differently on this, and pulling out the stuff that isn't working so that you can focus that budget on the ones that are actually driving sales. If your ACOS is going up, it means that you have you got a leaky bucket, right? There's water coming out somewhere where there shouldn't be water. And so we have to find that by looking either inside of Ignite or going through and digging through the search terms report.
Well, the other thing I might add to that too is it really depends on the competitive marketplace. Your ACOS can go up just because there's more competition too. If competitors are coming on board and bidding higher, that's going to drive up your cost and make your ACOS more expensive. So it's not just your listing. There's things outside of your control that are affecting that as well.
And I saw a few other people kind of say that in the comments too. We kind of see them all scrolling by. So I give you bravo for pulling the good ones out. But people have said, how do I know if I have an optimized listing? And I think you're right. You should never settle on your listing as being optimized. You should always be looking to further optimize it. And the suggestion I like to give, besides using a tool like Scope to look at competitors and find new keywords, is, also you really want to look at your reviews. That's the best place to, I have an example I use in a presentation that I give. It's for a $299 Bluetooth speaker. They rank under 100 for Bluetooth speakers, BSR. And if you read the review, I kid you not, somebody talks about how cool the volume knob is. Right. And so when you see that somebody thinks that your volume knob is really cool, then you need to go optimize your listing and talk about how you have, that was what made Apple's first iTouch or, the click wheel, iPod. Right? Like that was the iPod, the original iPod click wheel. So if there's something people like about your product, you need to make sure that you're including that in your product description, because there's optimizing for search and there's optimizing for conversion. And when you're dealing with sponsored product ads, you're looking for a little bit of both.
I see a couple questions related to click-through rate. So Brandon, just from all the data that you guys kind of looked at when you were putting this together, did you get like what a benchmark good click-through rate is? And do you even look at that? Personally, I don't. Inside of Amazon, I look at my conversions more than anything else. Is that the same way that all you guys feel as well?
Yeah, the click-through rate, I would pay attention to your click-through rate if you're trying to figure out if keywords are relevant or not. And if you expect a keyword to be really relevant, if I'm selling apple slicers and my click-through rate for apple slicer was relatively low compared to my other things, I'd take a look at my title and my image to make sure if I'm bidding on apple slicer and people aren't identifying that as an apple slicer, there's probably something wrong with my title or my image to not convey that. But click-through rate is, like I said, one of the metrics I think Amazon pays attention to determine if you're relevant or not. And I don't use it a lot for more than that. I think it helps to, like I said, to optimize the title and the image specifically.
And that's something that Scott and I have talked about in the past. And Jeff, you and I had a very similar conversation on this. There's a couple kind of sticking points in PPC, right? The first is getting impressions. If you're not getting impressions, you need to raise your bid or make your listing more relevant or work through some of those keywords, right? Once you're getting impressions, the next thing is to get clicks. And CTR is one of those things where you can look at that metric and say, okay, I am relevant or I'm not relevant to that keyword or to that search term. And then you can start to do some of the other things like optimizing your listing, optimizing your title, optimizing your photos, right? Once you're starting to get the clicks, then you have to focus on the sale. If you're getting a ton of clicks and no sales, then you most likely either have a relevance problem where they're clicking on yellow water bottle and you only sell red and blue, or you have a conversion rate problem on your listing. You don't have any reviews. Your photos are meh. Your description is okay, but not great. Those are the kind of the three big sticking points that I see there as well. And that's kind of how I use CTR. I don't look at it as the overall benchmark. It's just for that one little thing. If I need to get more clicks, then I'll look at that.
Yeah. And I think you just went through, you just threw out 10 massive gold nuggets, right? And I think that for people that just missed that and said, wait a minute, what did he just say? That's what you guys are going to cover later this week, right? So that's where you get into like the optimization, and that's really the art, right? That's your art of all this, is that there's all these things that you have to do at certain inflection points when your data is telling you certain things. And Ignite is going to help you with a lot of that because it's going to kind of identify some of those for you. But you as a seller, it's kind of like you can go hire a service to import your products, but you should still understand what an import company does and the rules that they follow and the fees and all, so don't just say like, oh, I'm going to use Ignite and wait for Ignite to make suggestions. You have to understand this yourself. You have to understand how this is going to all work, and you have to understand what type of art you want to apply to this. And I think one of the things maybe for us to do, and we can work on this together, is take all of those pieces that you just talked about and kind of put them out there as like, these are your different decisions. And we can make some recommendations that say, if you're trying to do this, you go left. If you're trying to do that, you go right, and give people some understandings. Because I think, yeah, I agree. And Chris just totally nailed it with what he just said.
Cool.
Yana says, when I'm downloading my Amazon reports, I'm only getting a text file. How do I download an Excel file? You don't. They export it as a text-based CSV. But if you open Microsoft Excel, you can then open the report from inside of there, and it will open as an Excel spreadsheet.
Hey, Chris, before we go any further, I know we've got a few more minutes here. I know these guys are going to have to jump, but basically, I just want to remind everyone, a lot of people are saying that they're jumping in, but they want to know how to get access to the Facebook group. That's a great question, but we're going to try to answer it. What we're going to do, Chris, we're going to have them just email support@theamazingseller.com. Support@theamazingseller.com. Let us know your email, especially the email that you use for Facebook. And then what we can do is we can invite you to that group once it's live. It should be live in the next couple of days.
And we also, anyone who signs up for Ignite, we'll be able to message them and invite them because we'll have their
That
Yeah,
actually
we'll
might
have
be the
them-
better way to do it.
Yeah, that'll actually be a really good way of doing it too. But you can email support. Let us know that you guys did actually take the 30-day trial. You're into Ignite. You're starting to use it, and then we can take that conversation, bring it into the Facebook group, and then I know Jeff. What we'll probably do is when you get back in town, you get settled in. Maybe we'll have you back on. We'll do a Facebook Live with you. If Brandon's available, I mean, if we have any questions, maybe we can even take a lot of these questions, condense them down to like the top 15 questions or 20 questions, and we can knock them out into a Facebook Live, and then we can maybe answer some other ones. But Chris and I are going to be doing a deep dive into all of these different phases, and then we'll also do Q&A throughout this entire week. But again, I would check out the tool.
Just to give your audience an understanding, we did this last week on a Facebook Live in the Seller Labs group, and we literally took the first half of the slides and did 4 hours of Facebook Live just on those two topics. So we understand that there's a lot of kind of granular questions that people have trying to understand this. And this is where you just really need to digest a lot of the information. That's why we wanted to basically give you guys a free course, right? Like this information's all out there. There's no reason for anybody to have to pay to access to learn how this stuff works. You're spending enough money really understanding, how to make your ads work. So we want to really put that data out there. We'd be happy to come back on and answer more questions because I think you're going to learn a lot in terms of how your audience is looking to be taught from this.
Yeah. And I think also when we get the Facebook group going, we'll also have a lot of different examples or questions from people that are actually starting to run using the software, but then also starting to refine and starting to explore other ways to find those keywords and then search terms and then look at the data and all of that stuff. And when we want to get geeky, well, we have a couple guys that could help us out with that. I didn't call you guys geeks, but I just said it. We definitely got two guys that can help us out with that. That's all I'm saying.
Wouldn't be the first time. It's not going to be the last.
But I want to surround myself with smarter people than I am, of course. And I'm telling you right now, we've got definitely a lot of smart people here, Brandon, Chris, and Jeff. And I'm sure we'll have more experts on here in the future. So
there's one question I want to answer really quick. A couple people have said, how long does it take to sync accounts? That's going to depend on the size of your account.
Okay, good question.
Yeah, so Brandon's obviously going to keep an eye on that because there's a lot of people kind of coming into the system all at one time because we're on this webinar.
Yeah, I think I actually just pushed out a change to try and do that a little bit faster. So I'm going to pay attention to that really closely the next day.
Yeah. So cool. keep that in mind. You might have to, if you've got a really big account, you might have to come back later today. Like it might take a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think when you guys were in like super beta, it still only took a few hours. In the first one, Brandon, that you and I kind of set up and walked through. So it will be there. It does take a little bit of time to sync all that.
I mean, the one thing I'll say too, if you connect a brand new Amazon account that you haven't connected already, it does take about a minimum of probably 15 minutes before your products show up in there on a best case. Maybe up to a couple hours if you're a larger account.
Okay. And is that process, I'm just, again, asking as a listener, the process to basically getting that all connected, is that pretty self-explanatory? I mean, is it, you guys walk them through the connection process?
I've had very few questions about that part. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a couple steps. It's more than I'd like, but it's just the way Amazon makes us do it. Because it's two separate APIs. So
Scott, the answer is it's easy enough for me to do, and it's easy enough for you to do. So it should be easy enough.
That's the big question. It's easy enough for me to do.
If Scott can do it, Scott can do it, you guys can do it.
You can call me the non-smart one. I'm okay with that.
I made no such assertion. You just don't type so good. Boris wants to know, does Ignite export data in a format that's friendly with bulk upload option?
It doesn't right now. I mean, you don't.
But there's not really a reason to.
There's not really a reason to because you can do it all inside Ignite. Although we have had a few requests to be able to export data, so we'll probably figure out some way to do that in some sort of pull it back to Excel format.
Yeah, and I think the thing to kind of say on that is, and Chris, because we've been working with you the last few weeks. This is an early product, right? So this product has just come out of beta, and I'm not going to say that it's going to be bug free, but I can tell you that if you have any issues and you contact support at Seller Labs, we're going to address them quickly. If you have any recommendations or suggestions, we're going to jump on those and prioritize them to figure out exactly what works. And I know we've added a lot of suggestions based on Chris and how Chris runs his campaigns and how Chris wanted to teach all this. So we're going to see that.
Yeah, and I think also having our Facebook community will also allow people to make suggestions because they're using the tool. So I think right there is a great way for us to get live interaction, and then also, you know, you can say like, listen, that update's going to take some time. This one here is going to take a lot less time, and we can kind of get real live kind of interaction there, which I think will be cool. So it's kind of like, I mean, people that are jumping in right now too are kind of getting early access, but they're also getting to grow with the software and kind of build it along the way with you guys, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
Cool. So Chris, any last questions? I know we're hitting just about 2 hours right now.
Yeah, how about we give away Ignite?
Let's do that. How are we going to do it, Chris? Did you have any ideas?
I have not. So if you guys have any bright ones, I can scroll through and pick out, somebody that's been an absolute help in the chat. That's one way to do it. If you guys have a brighter idea.
I think that's a good idea. Whoever's been in there active and that's been helping helping other people in the chat, maybe that's a good one. I think that is a good one. Let's do that. So Chris, why don't you scan? While you're scanning, you want me to answer or have a couple more questions? We can fire
let me pump one your way. Should you try PPC with a brand new product right away or wait for a while before starting a campaign?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think get 1 or 2 reviews and then start PPC. You don't need a lot of reviews to convert sponsored product ads. I started it on my product with 3 reviews and was really able to get, listen, your choice today is to either give products away and you're not going to get reviews, or to run sponsored product ads and maybe or not get reviews. And so I know this isn't about like how to get reviews, but it's I would rather do sponsored product ads to drive sales velocity than give products away, because there's a really good chance that I'm going to either break even or make money, as opposed to just giving my product away
and help you rank for
sales.
keywords.
It is, we didn't even get into that, but it is essentially Amazon's version of a super URL.
Right.
So you are taking the keyword and driving sales to it, which Amazon is going to reward you for.
Yeah. The only thing I think the only other thing that I want to say that you said, like, get 1 to 3 reviews. I used to always say like 5 reviews, but here's the deal. Like, we're doing product research a little bit differently now. So we're going after products that don't require a ton of reviews to get sales. It depends on how competitive your space is. Personally, we just launched a product in our open brand, no reviews, started pay-per-click. And we're at about 10 to 15 sales a day regularly using pay-per-click to drive those sales. So I just think
your conversion rate gets better with more reviews, right? So you might be paying a little bit more upfront you might be paying a little bit more higher ACoS upfront before you get those reviews.
Yeah.
But as your conversion rate gets better, as I mentioned, a higher conversion rate helps everything. So more reviews, higher conversion rates, your ACoS is just going to improve over time.
Yep. Cool. Chris, did you have a winner there? You want me to do one more question?
And of course, I picked someone whose name I cannot pronounce.
I love that.
So I'm going to go ahead and butcher it. And it's Aurelia. And Aurelia has just been asking and even answering some of the best questions that I've seen in terms of making sure that we covered all the fundamentals today. So I think as long as Aurelia is still on with us, and I have your email address, so if I'm butchering your name and you get an email from us, just know that it's you, and that I'm not, just completely butchering your name for no reason.
Yeah, and a bunch of people are still asking, is there going to be a replay? And the answer is yes, as long as it's being recorded, which we think it will be, but we won't know officially until we end this, which hopefully it is. But I'm pretty sure it is, because this has been running pretty smooth. So yes, that will be up shortly. And we'll also email everyone that has registered with all of the details as far as the new training and this training and all the stuff that we have coming up here this week. So they're coming on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I got to go jump. I got to go run across the street and do another presentation. And I appreciate you guys having us on. And it's been fun to work with you guys. And I know your audience is going to get a ton of knowledge out of all the stuff happening, with the PPC content that you guys are creating.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And guys, if you guys want to take advantage of that, again, go to theamazingseller.com/ignite, and you'll be able to sign up for your 30-day free trial there. And then also either email support at theamazingseller.com. Let us know that you did, and then we'll go ahead and give you access to the Facebook group once it's created in the next couple of days. And then these guys will also be able to get us your information. So if you have any other questions, keep dropping them in. We're going to go ahead and take this chat roll, and we're going to use it for this week so we can have a lot of content to deliver back to you guys and answer a lot of these questions. And that'll start tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time. I just want to say thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Brandon. You guys are awesome. You guys have created something that is just unbelievable. And like I said, it's taken me a long time. And Jeff, I had a private conversation with you, and I said there's just been nothing I felt really strong about that I felt was going to be easy for people to use, but then also useful. I just want to say thank you so much for helping us out with this, and Brandon for all of your expertise back there being a programmer and all that stuff. So I just want to say thank you guys, and I look forward to using the tool, but then also helping this community with your help.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. So, Chris, let's wrap this baby up. So, guys, again, keep dropping the questions in. We're going to wrap this up officially. Take care. And as always, we'll see you guys around. Take action. And we'll see you this week on more pay-per-click training. Bye.